I've been a police officer in Texas for almost 20 years now, and during that time, I've encountered plenty of strange and disturbing things. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened one scorching July afternoon. It was around 2 p.m., the sun was blistering hot, and the streets were eerily quiet. You know, the kind of heat that makes the air feel thick, like it's suffocating you. People were hiding indoors, and the unusual hustle of the town had all but vanished. That's when my radio crackled with a report that will haunt me for the rest of my life. Officer Thornton, my partner's voice came through. We've got a report of a black sedan driving erratically from street to street. The woman behind the wheel is acting strange. She's just stopping and going, acting like she's lost. You need to check it out. I thought it to myself, maybe just she's just drank or maybe she's going through something, depression maybe. It wasn't unusual for officers to get called like this, especially in the middle of a heat wave when people start getting a little disoriented. I spotted the car about 5 minutes later, parked on the side of a quiet residential street. I flickered on my lights and pulled up behind her. She didn't hesitate. The car rolled up to a stop and I got out, walking over to her window. Ma'am, are you okay? I asked, trying to sound calm despite the unease creeping into my chest. We've had a report that you've been acting erratically. She turned to look at me. Her eyes were oddly calm. Too calm. Oh, officer, everything's fine. I'm just exploring the area. There was something off about her. Her voice didn't match the situation. It was too calm, almost rehearsed. All right, I said, pushing aside my discomfort. Do you have your car's documents with you? She handed them over without hesitation. I glanced at them. Everything was in order. No signs of impairment, no drugs, no alcohol. I didn't get the feeling she was in any kind of distress, but I was still on edge. Something didn't sit right. Okay, everything seems fine, I said, but I'm going to need to take a look inside your car. You don't mind, do you? She didn't argue. I walked around to the back of the car and opened the door to check the interior. The moment I looked inside, my heart stopped. The woman was gone. In the blink of an eye, the driver's seat was empty, but the door hadn't opened. The window hadn't been rolled down. There were no signs that she had gotten out. I stood frozen for a moment, my mind struggling to process what I was seeing. Has she vanished? I circled the car, calling out her, my voice shaking now. Ma'am, are you here? But the street was empty, silent. I checked the car again. 3, maybe 4 times. I looked under the seat, in the trunk, nothing. No trace of her. I was just starting to feel the cold knock and knot in my stomach. This wasn't just a strain, it was impossible. I called for backup. My voice was steady, but inside my heart was racing. How could someone disappear in broad daylight like that? This wasn't some crime scene or break-in. This was something else. When the backup officer arrived, they searched the car, the area, and even the streets surrounded. Nothing, no sign of the woman, no clothes, just an empty car in the middle of the street. I drove back to the station, my hands spinning. I couldn't make sense of what had happened. The senior officer decided to review my body camera footage, hoping to get anything that could help this bizarre incident. When they watched the footage, I saw their faces fall. They were just as confused as I was. They could see her too. The woman sitting in the car looking perfectly normal one moment, then gone the next. They rewound the video again and again and again. 10, 12 times. No one could explain how she vanished. I couldn't just drop it. We traced the car's registration, trying to find out who owned it. It led us to an address, an old house, out in the country, miles away from it. 4 of us went to investigate. The house was out in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by tall grass and empty land. We knocked on the door, no answer. We checked the back, no signs of anyone living there. Then a neighbor appeared, looking at us curiously. Everything okay? He asked, his eyes flickering from the officers to the house. We found a car at this address, one of the officers explained. The owner's gone missing. We're just trying to figure out what's going on. The neighbor's face changed when he heard the description of the woman. Well, there used to be a woman who lived there. She was the one who owned that car, but she died 15 years ago. He said slowly, eyes wide with realization. What you're describing, that's her. I couldn't speak. I just stood there, my stomach churning as I processed his words. The woman who had been driving that car, she'd been dead for over a decade? We tried everything, tracking down any relatives, anyone who might have known her, but everyone was either dead or unreachable. It was as if the woman had disappeared from history, leaving only the car as her connection to this world. The senior officers called a private meeting, and when they came out, they made their decision. This wasn't a crime, it wasn't some trick or misunderstanding, no, this was something else. They concluded it was paranormal event. The woman in the car wasn't alive, not in any sense we understood, and so they closed the case. There would be no further investigation, no more digging into it. They even sent me on leave, telling me to take some time off, recover from whatever I had witnessed. But deep down, I knew something had shifted inside me. What had I seen that day? What kind of power could erase a person from existence only to leave behind a cold, empty car? It's been months now. I have tried to move on, but there are nights when I can't sleep. When I close my eyes, I hear her voice again, that strange calmness in her words. I'm just exploring the area. But now I know. There are things out there that don't belong in our world, and sometimes they find their way in. This is a true story. I wish I could tell myself it wasn't, but I lived through it, and to this day, I still wonder what I really saw that night. It happened at one of the busiest, most famous places in Los Angeles, Santa Monica Pier. If you ever been there, you know it's always packed with people full of restaurants, rides, and street performers. But at night, when the crowds thin out, the lights flicker against the ocean waves, the place takes on a different kind of atmosphere. That night, something found me there. I was out with my family for a late dinner. After eating, we decided to take a drive and walk around the pier before heading home. It sounded like a perfect way to end the night. I remember feeling a little tired as I leaned my head against the car window, watching the neon lights blur past. I didn't know yet that this night was about to take a turn I would never forget. To get to Santa Monica Pier from where we were, we had to take a quieter road, not the main highway. It was late, and we figured the Pacific Coast Highway would be the fastest way there. If you don't know that road, it stretches along the ocean with long empty patches where you don't see a single house or street light, just darkness, trees, and open road. I wasn't really paying attention to the drive until my brother, who was being the wheel, slowed down slightly. I glanced up and immediately felt uneasy. A black pickup truck had appeared beside us, out of nowhere. It was an older Ford, the kind security teams sometimes use, with an open back. I could see two men sitting in the back, completely still, and inside the truck cabin there were four more men, six in total. They were perfectly lined up, shoulders square, facing forward, and they weren't moving at all. At first, I thought nothing of it, just another vehicle on the road, but then I noticed something that made my stomach twist. They were matching our speed. Whenever we sped up, they did it too. If we slowed down, they slowed down. It was like they were locked onto us. I tried to look at the driver through the reflection of my window. That's when I realized every single one of them had completely blank expressions. They weren't talking, they weren't reacting, they were just there. Even the two men in the open back of the truck didn't move. The wind was whipping through the night air, and they sat like statues, stiff as corpses. I don't know how to explain it, but they didn't feel human. A cold chill ran down my spine. I turned to my family and said, "Why is this truck pacing us? It's been right next to us for miles now." No one really took me seriously. They were too busy talking and listening to music. I started getting frustrated. "Turn off the music. Just look at the truck beside us." Finally, my brother turned the volume down and glanced over, and that's when it happened. The truck was gone. I mean, completely gone. There was nowhere for it to turn off, no exits, no side streets, just a straight empty highway. I gasped, feeling my heartbeat in my throat. It was just there. I saw it. There were six people in the truck. Where did it go? My family stared at me like I was losing my mind. "What truck? We've been alone on this road the whole time." My blood ran ice cold. My own brother, who had been driving, never even saw it. But I did. I saw every detail of the truck and the six men inside. By the time we finally reached Santa Monica Pier, I tried to shake the feeling off. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe I imagined it. The pier was bright and full of life. Couples walking hand in hand, tourists laughing, waves crashing against the wooden beam below. Then I felt normal again for a little while. We parked the car at one of the lots near the entrance. As we walked toward the restaurant, I suddenly realized I left my purse in the car. I told my family I'd be right back and jogged over to grab it. And the second I reached for the door handle, I froze. Because parked just a few feet away was the same black Ford truck. My breath caught in my throat. It was them. Same six men, but this time they were all staring directly at me. My body turned to stone. Before they had been motionless, expressionless, but now they were smiling. Not just any smile, a wide, unnatural grin, identical on each face, like they were waiting for something. Like they knew I was alone. I couldn't move, I couldn't breathe, I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then a hand grabbed my shoulder. I nearly screamed. I spun around, my heart in my throat. It was my friend, Penelope. She frowned. What are you doing? You've been standing here too long. We were getting worried. Come on, let's go back inside. I swallowed hard and shakily pointed toward the truck. Penelope, do you see that truck? She followed my gaze and gave me a confused look. What truck? I snapped my head back around. It was gone. Not driving away, not fading in the distance, just gone. Like it had never been there at all. I still think about that night. I know what I saw. That truck, those men, their faces, they were real. Or at least they were there. But now I understand the truck was not normal. It was never a truck at all. Maybe they were ghosts. Maybe they were something worse. All I know is they saw me that night, and now I still never forget their faces. It was freezing December night when my friends and I made a choice we'd regret forever. We'd always been drawn to the eerie and unexplained haunted roads, abandoned hospitals, and old asylums. If a place had a reputation for being cursed, we had to check it out. But there was one place about an hour away that stood out above the rest. People whispered about it, but never too loudly. There were stories, ones that didn't just scare you, they stayed with you. People who went there spoke of an overwhelming sense of being watched, of hearing things they shouldn't have. And the worst rumor, if you ever heard someone whispers Merry Christmas, while standing on the bridge you were marked, and whatever marked you never let you go. We thought it was just another urban legend until the night we learned the truth. I had just been promoted at work, and to celebrate, I planned a night out with my closest friends. A few drinks, some food, and of course, one of our late night ghost hunting adventures. At around 9 p.m., we pulled up to the bridge near the infamous spot. The road was isolated, deep in the woods, miles away from any town. The silence was oppressive. No passing cars, no insects, not even the wind. It was like the entire world was holding its breath. My friend Mark parked in the middle of the road. We stepped out into the cold, our breath fogging in the air. The headlights clicked off, and suddenly it was too dark, the kind of darkness that feels alive. We stood in a tight circle, our voices hushed. Then someone whispered, "Let's just do it." So in unison, we called out, "Merry Christmas!" The words echoed into the night. We stood frozen, waiting nothing, just silence. Relieved but a little disappointed, we climbed back into the car. Mark turned the key, and that's when it started. The car jerked violently to the right, skidding against the pavement. Metal screeched. Mark slammed on the brakes. What the hell was that? I turned to the back seat and my stomach dropped. Sarah, sitting in the middle, was completely frozen, her face drained of color. Her hands trembled as she pointed at the empty seat beside her. There was a light, she whispered, and something sitting next to me. The blood in my veins turned to ice. What did it look like? I asked, barely able to get the words out. Her lips quivered. I don't know. I couldn't look at its face. I swallowed hard. Try the engine again. Mark turned the key. Nothing. Then the dashboard lit up on its own. The headlights flickered on, but this time they weren't shining ahead. They were pointing directly at us. Panic set in. I'm not staying in this car, I muttered, yanking at the door handle. The moment I stepped out, something pushed me hard. I stumbled forward, smashing my head into the car window. The glass cracked. I gasped and spun around, expecting to see Mark or someone else messing with me, but they were still all in the car. A cold, rotten stench filled the air, the kind of smell that makes your stomach churn, like wet earth and something long dead. Try your phones, Jenny whispered. We all checked, no signal, not even emergency service. I don't know how long we sat there, trapped, too scared to move. Finally, we made a decision. Leave the car and walk. There was an old house about 2 miles away, just past the woods. It was our only hope, so we ran. The road was endless. Every shadow felt like it was reaching for us. I kept glancing over my shoulder, convinced something was following. Then we saw it. At first, it looked like a tall, thin tree swaying in the distance, but then it moved. It was watching. The thing was massive, a feet tall, maybe more. Its limbs were long, almost distorted, and its head tilted as if it were studying us. And then it spoke, a raspy, gurgling whisper. Merry Christmas. I don't remember who screamed first. We bolted. Branches tore at our skin. The air felt heavy, like we were venting through something unseen. Then suddenly, Jenny collapsed. Her boyfriend, a guy built like a linebacker, tried to lift her, but he couldn't. It's like she weighs 1,000 pounds. She gasped, struggling. Then, just as suddenly as she went down, the weight lifted. He yanked her up, and we ran. Finally, we saw headlights, a truck. We didn't hesitate. We threw ourselves into the road, waving frantically. The driver hit the brakes. He didn't ask questions. Maybe he didn't need to. We made it home, but we didn't sleep that night. At around 3 a.m., I grabbed my backpack to put it away. That's when I saw it. Deep claw-like scratches etched into the fabric. I didn't remember them being there before. The next morning, we returned for the car. It was a wreck. Windows shattered, tires flattened, the metal dented like something had been crawling on it. But the worst part, crawled across the windshield in smeared condensation as if written by something breathing from the inside. Merry Christmas. I went back once during the day, but never again at night, because some roads don't just take you places, they take something from you, and some things should stay hidden in the dark.